Hello, I'm Björn,
And I'm Johanna.
and we're very happy to be here today.
We met each other at the Iceland Academy of the Arts during our Bachelor of Product Design. It's a really nice school with highly skilled teachers that we can only recommend looking into.
Indeed. And me and Johanna, we're not a design duo, but we really like collaborating because we share a lot of opinions in regards to design. We are, for example, fascinated with materials, and by that I'm not really talking about in product form necessarily, but everything surrounding it, from mining and industrial processing steps, a really wide spectrum.
We also believe that design can rather be a tool to research and investigate and challenge common world perspectives rather than being a commercial tool. So we work together on various projects, such as our mutual graduation project, which we would like to introduce to you today. It's called Cargo.
Yeah. And Cargo started with this image right here. This is a dumpster full of bananas in Iceland. And this might not seem of particular importance or particular interest even, but we don't have any banana plantations in Iceland. And that's why we thought this was so intriguing and the image got stuck to our brain.
Objects like these bananas appear in front of us on an everyday basis. So they're in our supermarkets all around. So at some point, of course, we usually start taking them for granted. But finding these bananas repeatedly in Icelandic trash made us really question where they're actually coming from.
Indeed, and we wanted to find somebody who imported these bananas, not because we were looking for anybody to blame, but we're just asking to find some answers to our questions. And this led us to a local food importer who educated us about how the world is shrinking at an ever-growing rate due to cargo shipping.
And he told us about some fascinating facts, such as for fruits and vegetables, there are basically no seasons anymore. So if one fruit stops growing in one place on the planet, we just import it from another. And also, if you think about where Iceland is located, and we compare it to the origin of these bananas, there's basically 8,800 kilometers in between. So it's at the other end of the planet. And still super normal that they're just there with perfect peel and an immaculate shape. So from these conversations, we also learned that everything has become so accessible that it's just a shipload away.
Yeah, and as we got interested in global cargo shipping, we started playing around. And we made this banana passport, envisioning the journey the banana must have taken just to reach us. And we learned some pretty amazing facts, like that 33 people touch a single banana on its way from Ecuador to Iceland, and that it travels for more than 14 days through all these various ports that kind of connect the globalized world.
And we started to look at this entire space that at least Björn and I were previously not aware of. It's the space between production and consumption itself. And we wanted to learn more about it and get first-hand information. So the only thing we could do is ask the person in the country who would be most knowledgeable about it. So we contacted Iceland's biggest shipping company.
Yeah, and they really didn't want to meet us. So it took us like 3 months just to convince them to allow us onto the site. But in conversation with these people, we learned that in the heart of the system, that practically enables our modern lifestyle, is the steel shipping container itself. And when it got standardized in 1969 only, all of a sudden it could match on any ship, any train, and any truck worldwide. It's really sped up material flow around the world.
This also encouraged specialized industries. So singular countries would all of a sudden focus on the production of aluminium, coffee, sugar, and then rely on other countries for the import of other products. So if you think about how this system has been growing, the first transatlantic vessel in 1969 was carrying 236 containers, whereas the biggest ship today is carrying more than 19,000 containers at a time.
Yeah, and if we look at our local context, Iceland, we are a rock situated in the middle of the North Atlantic. We don't even have the resources we need to be able to sustain ourselves or grow our own food because of the harsh climatic conditions. But on the other hand, we have some other resources.
We have fish, and a lot amount of fish. So whereas other countries have kings and queens on their coins, Icelanders have cod and other fish types. We also have seemingly abundant amounts of energy, hydro energy and geothermal energy, which does not only keep Icelandic population excited and by heating their streets, also heavy industries such as the aluminium industry has settled since the 1970s, benefiting from this vast amounts of energy.
Yeah, and which is why we chose these two materials, cod and aluminium, to become the representatives of Iceland within this global system of cargo shipping. And we went on a quest of tracing these materials, documenting and objectifying to be able to mediate our research. And a huge part of this was to actually explore the system ourselves.
So we did a short documentary also to share our insights into the scale of the system, but also the rough aesthetics of these industrial contexts that are basically making that are the basis for our everyday products.
And we wanted to create objects, and we wanted to create products that are their own made-in label. Objects that embed not only material source and assembly, but also the transporting story. So we are basically objectifying our mutual design research by telling a story through these objects.
And at the end, we chose a very relatable aluminium product, which we wanted to trace more specifically, also to just get a hold of one single pathway within this big economic system. So we chose for this aluminium can.
Yeah, and the can, of course, didn't really leave us with a lot of information, just a tiny logo on the backside, so we kind of started digging around. Part of the story we got from the cargo shipping company, but their products are only traceable to a certain point. So over a period of a few weeks, we collected fragments of the story, some from very boring statistics, and other from some people we interviewed. And this slowly started taking on a kind of a whole image.
And after we had exploded this presumably simple can, we wanted to bring all this information down into one illustrated made-in label, in which we trace this can from the very first steps of sourcing all the way down to our hands. And after having done that, we were actually quite shocked.
Yeah, indeed. And the journey starts in Oriximiná in Brazil, where a red stone called bauxite is mined. Bauxite is desirable because of the high amounts of aluminium it contains, but it needs to be purified to be usable. This is why it travels down the Amazon River down to Oriximiná, where it's transformed into white powder. But to be usable, this has to be melted at ridiculously high temperature. It's why it travels more than 6,000 kilometers on its way to Iceland.
There it's being melted into massive bricks of aluminium at 2,500 degrees. These are called aluminium ingots, but that's not the last destination since there's no secondary industry in Iceland. So they're leaving the country again over the North Atlantic to Europe's biggest harbor in Rotterdam, where they're partially being stored, partially going down the River Rhine to a company in Düsseldorf, where they're milled into sheets or rolled into sheets of aluminium. But that's not the last step. They're going back up via Rotterdam to England, the port of Immingham.
Yeah, from Immingham to Luton, where the sheets are finally pressed into can shape, back to Immingham, over the North Atlantic for the last time before arriving to Reykjavik, where our national drink is filled on the can.
So this is also a very clear example of how our world is shrinking. Just because of low energy prices and economical reasons, it makes in a ridiculous way sense to ship tons of materials around the globe.
And it's also quite obvious that the traditional maiden label is kind of losing its point in the age of global cargo shipping. And that it's not really suiting anybody's purposes anymore except for maybe the industries. So I want you to think about how would a maiden label for complex products such as a computer look when it can have origin points in multiple continents simultaneously.
So our project is a proposal for an actually informative label. We just believe that having more information on regular products can be super exciting and quite challenge one's perspective towards the things we usually take for granted. Thank you.
Thank you.